Hey, I'm Nason Tackett with Here Technologies. Today I'm going to show you our new digital overlay. This is a new product that mounts on an existing Hearback Pro mixer. It's very thin and it slides on top of all of the knobs. This gives you a screen above each knob to show you what is currently routed to that knob. So before this product, you had to label all of your channels manually. We did have the paper overlay that made it somewhat easier to label, or you took out the masking tape or blue painter's tape and labeled all your channels. Now it can be done digitally. So originally we only had 16 channels, but a couple years ago we introduced the V5 firmware, which allowed you to have up to 128 channels. So things got a little more complex, and that really begged for a way to label these digitally. Back when we first designed the Hearback Pro mixer, we did look into putting screens on every channel, but at that time the technology just wasn't quite there yet. Since then, these new OLED screens have come out on the market, and the cost is pretty reasonable, and we decided to come out with a overlay. And so what this is it's a very thin product that mounts on top of an existing Hearback Pro mixer, or we also offer it where you can order the mixer with it already installed. And it has a screen above each of the 16 knobs, as well as a large screen at the top. So one big difference with the OLED screens is that each of the pixels is an LED. It actually emits light, unlike the older LCD technology. So this is great for low light applications, which are pretty common in studios and live sound. So if you're in a low light setting, then even from several feet away, you can read these labels clearly. Now, the way that this works is there is a little expansion card slot here on the side of the mixer. The overlay has a ribbon cable and a little card that plug into the expansion slot, and that provides the power and the data to the screens. So this uses all of the existing network infrastructure. The names actually reside on the hub. So when you take a mixer and you plug it into a hub, even if you have multiple setups, whenever you plug a mixer into that hub, then it's going to request the channel names and populate accordingly. So everything is centralized. It's very easy. Now, with the new firmware, you can actually assign any channel, any stereo pair of channels, or you can even submix up to 16 things down to a single knob. Now, every mixer can be configured differently, and that's where it's just begging to have this ability to see electronically what's on each of those knobs, because without that, you will have to have a sheet with all of your inputs to know what is on input 1, what is on input 2, and so on. Well, as long as you've got those labeled in the hub, then they're automatically going to show up here. And just to kind of give you an example, if I go in and edit what's on a knob, you can do that using the mixer, or you can do it using the iOS app. Now in edit mode, I'm editing what's on that knob. I've got 2 banks here. This button switches between banks, and when I do that, you can see that the labels on every knob change. It's showing you, okay, I'm looking at the first set of 16, I'm looking at the second set of 16. That's on one hub. One hub is capable of doing up to 32 channels. So if you wanted to do more than 32, you could add a second hub, third hub, even fourth hub to do up to 8 banks or 128 channels. Well, that gets a little crazy. So having the screens really helps, because you can bank through there and you can see what each of those are. Now, say I want to assign some things to that knob. Well, I can start with drums. The solid lights indicates that's the only thing I'm doing. Now that is stereo, so that's why you've got both of these lit up. But maybe I want to also do bass and maybe some synth. And now this is a submix. So if I get out of here, now we see down here we've got submix 13. That's just kind of a default name. That resides on this mixer. If you look at some of these labels, drums has these little bars on the left and right. That indicates that that's a stereo channel. Whereas click over here, that indicates that it is a mono channel. Now down here you see submix 13. It's got a box around it. What that indicates is that that's a submix, because eventually you may want to change that name. That's something you do through the iOS app, because that name resides on the mixer itself. You can also change the name of the mixer, which is up here at the top in yellow. This one is labeled booth mixer. Well, to start off with, these are going to start off with the mixer's address or ID, and that's kind of a random address that we assign to it. So you can put something a little more meaningful like drummer's mixer. Now up here at the top, just under that, you've got some other things that appear when you go to make adjustments. This is also useful because you can actually send text messages to this screen from the iOS app. You can send it either to everybody or you can send it to one mixer. So that's kind of a handy little feature there. So you can kind of see that this is extremely useful for situations where you've got different bands using the same equipment. Recording studios are a good example of this, where you've got one band that's coming in and they're doing a session. Maybe later in the day you've got a different band. So the great thing is that you can save those configuration files from the hub. It basically shows up as a mass storage device when you plug in the USB cable. And you can name that file, maybe the band's name and the date, and then when they come back in, you can just pull that file up, and now all your inputs are exactly where you had them before, as well as all the stereo settings. Those are also saved to that file. So another good example would be praise and worship bands in churches. They oftentimes have different groups that come in, different bands that come in. You might have the contemporary band that comes in during one time, and then you've got the traditional. So you can have different routings, different names associated with those things. So it's really, really handy when it comes to having different people using it. Even if it's just one group, actually, it's extremely useful because you've got the bright OLED screens that you can see in the dark. So that really is very useful. When you reach down to make an adjustment, you can clearly see what you're doing. But also, if you wanted to drill down to that submix, for the advanced user, not all the musicians are going to want to do that, but there's going to be some that want to actually go in and maybe tweak submixes and things like that. So for those people, these screens are extremely useful. So no matter where you use the mixer, the new digital overlay is a very useful thing. For more information, visit our website at heartechnologies.com, or if you have any questions, drop us a line on Instagram or Twitter, Facebook, email, or pick up the phone and call us.